let's just assume that this thing is real. What is it? What story do we tell? So we're going to look at stuff that we sort of know right now is happening in the books that didn't make it into Game of Thrones, stuff that we think is going to happen or that in theory could happen, and then stuff that is just sort of a natural, I guess, progression of potential avenues, or even just where we leave the show. What story would you tell going forward right now if you were to just say you pick off right where Jon walks off into the cold sunset at the end of Game of Thrones, the series finale? Where do you start?
I mean, that's what where we're at, right? So we just left off. I kind of think they have to. This is a continuation of the same show. It's the sequel, if you will. And I think you pick up with him leading the wildlings back. I mean, reclaiming some of this land, right? We saw the battle at Winterfell. We saw him there, and now to go beyond the wall. I mean, he's essentially becoming the king beyond the wall, right? I mean, that's the whole thing is he's going to become the king beyond the wall. He was the king in the north for a while. Kills Dany, or does he? Which I'm not convinced 100% that she's dead. She was carried off. Why? Why is there?
Right.
Why carry the body off if there's not going to be some sort of, that's a whole other thing. We'll get there in a second. But I would pick up right there with him. It's a show about him. So you, from a different perspective, a different point of view, you're beyond the wall. And now you're hearing about things happening in the South. And you could reverse the whole thing, right? Is that this is where we do a lot of our production from, a lot of our happenings and plot points are there. And we hear rumor about things from the wall. I mean, what's left of it, and sort of what happens in Winterfell and his ties there. And it all kind of, as the news goes north, things can get lost in translation, right? I mean, things could be changed. So I just think it'd be a complete turn to kind of tell stuff from that angle. I still think there are going to be people who, depending on how things are run, I mean, what you have Bran sitting on the throne, right?
Yeah.
I'm like recalling all of this stuff. Okay, so his brother, cousin, whatever you want to call, right, is on the throne and is connected to the Werewood network, can see things. So there's that. You have Sansa in the north, Arya over there. All of his family are still big players in this Game of Thrones. It won't surprise me at all if you did bring in someone like, I mean, I know it's way out of sequence, but if you wanted to do like a young Griff, or somebody else tried to usurp the throne, or maybe people don't trust Bran, or who knows what it could be. Maybe people want him to return to power and they think they start to rally behind him, or something, I just
On the most basic level, right? For me, the stuff that they're going to do is probably, I just feel like you'd have like a character like Val, right? I mean, she to me is almost okay. If we're going to do a Jon show and it's going to take place afterwards, here's a character that was in the books. She already sort of is, in a way, kind of a love interest for Jon Snow, and they didn't include her in the show whatsoever. So here to me is now you're going to introduce this character. Now her role in the books could be totally different. She might die. She's actually headed to Hardhome right now,
true.
and she may die there. So do you bring Val in? If let's just say this Jon we don't know. Of course, it's obvious still. Is it real? But we're just, for the purpose of today's conversation, we're assuming it is.
Yeah.
So let's just say that this thing is real. And we're going to get, let's say it's 6 episodes. Like
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
way Disney does shows. Not that HBO does it that way, but let's just say, for sake of argument, that it's 6. So you get 6 episodes. I feel like you'd have to have some sort of a love interest for Jon. I'd say this is where you bring in Val. Maybe there's a wildling war. Maybe maybe there's still wildlings up there that didn't leave, and they felt like Jon betrayed him by taking all the wildlings down, so they had to fight off White Walkers and everything by themselves.
Right.
So, Hardhome, when Hardhome was destroyed, Jon wasn't there to save them. There's a lot you could do. They could still view him as a Southerner.
Yes.
So I think
Yeah.
you could maybe have Val be that opposing character, and then whether they get together or whatever. But I think that's certainly a plausible character. I think that's, if this thing is real, I feel like she has to be a character in it.
Well, yeah, just because of the setting, the location, you need someone who then people go read more about that character in the book. They're like, okay, who is this? Where could she go? Little is known about her, and you're right. You almost would need. It's not just that easy, right? He's just not going to walk up into beyond the wall and settle the wildlings. They're not all going to just trust him automatically. So if he has to earn that trust, and it's like this competition, and he's trying to win over Val and other wildlings, that would be a great way to do it because there is some evidence for that in the book. Um, yeah, I mean, gosh, like she's that. I can't believe I didn't think that's amazing, dude. Like because next to nothing is known about her. You still are gonna. Do you think they're gonna rebuild the wall? Do you think like is there gonna be a reason to do that, or is it all coming down? Because there's that whole divide. That's the other
Right.
thing too, is that they've come to the wall, then they were pushed further south to Winterfell. Now he's leading them back to kind of reclaim some of this land. There's going to be conflict. The whole thing could just be him sort of uniting the people. You know, an interesting thing in the text that happens a lot is I was like Sir Arthur Dane at one point, he has to like rally the local people in the when he's battling the Smiling Knight or whatever. And then there was the when Mance Rayder had to go beyond the wall, he was a crow who had to then win over the people and unite them in some way. So can Jon do that? And how are things going to shift up there? Do the wildling, do they go back to their culture before, or does this culture that was south of the wall start to extend beyond the wall a little bit? You know, I mean, is that
Right.
possible?
And that's a lot of the political aspects of it too. And then if you want to start bringing back, I mean, gosh, I mean, you really could just. It's like you really could. There's still a definite like forward progression from where we're at when we finish Game of Thrones because there's still tons of things you could do. They didn't even touch Blackfires in the show.
Right.
You could still totally go that route, even if you don't go down the idea that Dany is like, if you go down the idea that Dany isn't alive and like she's dead, and they don't resurrect her because, she had that conversation with Kinvarna. What was that going to turn into?
Sure. Yeah.
Even just stuff that we have seen in the show universe. And remember, let's just say in theory that this thing comes out. Well, it is going to come out if it is real, of course.
Yeah.
After House of the Dragon. What's to say that they don't establish some new thing in House of the Dragon that could be a theoretical threat years down the line, and that's what Jon has to deal with. Because I got the map pulled up here on if you're watching on YouTube, and like once you really start actually kind of looking at this, by the way, of the known area of the North, and I really like this map because it's really detailed and really well done. It's like, man, Hardhome's like way over here on this side. Here's the Haunted Forest, the Fist of the First Men. We don't even touch like the ice rivers, the frozen shore. We don't really go past the Frost Fangs or like the land of always winter. There's still so much in the North, like the real North. We have no idea what's even up there.
Well, the I guess sort of the magical element to this is you have the Children of the Forest. You would still have maybe a few others or something. I don't know, like what the whole deal might be. There may be more at the Land of Always Winter. There will be kind of are there more giants? Are there others that were left behind, like you said, dire wolves and things like magical creatures in the werewoods?
Yeah. So here's a comment too, because this has kind of gotten me thinking about this. Joe here says he'll discover the heart of winter and the origin of the Long Night King and a potential Night Queen. We didn't essentially touch on that, like in the show, right? So it was like the idea of Azor Ahai could still exist in this theoretical, Jon show.
Yeah, more explanation, just discovery of things that were going on there could be just give it more time, more room to sort of breathe. I think would be really cool. And just for folks who are kind of coming into the chat, yeah, we're assuming right now we're just kind of doing
this thing could totally for a lot of new people joining the chat here on YouTube. That we're just having fun today and assuming if this thing is real, which it still could, it could still not be, but if it is real, what would that look like? What do we think? What do we think it looks like in a post season 8 Game of Thrones universe? What from the books did they leave out that they could use as source material to bring back in? And I don't think we would get storylines like Lady Stoneheart, although in theory they could have resurrected her and she could still be out there. You know what I mean? I'm not saying they're going to, but young Griff was never even touched on. What's to say a new Targaryen doesn't come down?
Yeah.
Like after post everything and say, I'm going to depose Bran.
Well,
and they want to go that route.
what if all of our theories about, like, you know, Sir Arthur Dayne and the old Kingsguard coming north, and Rhaegar Targaryen and Mance Rayder and all that kind of stuff. I know their stories are kind of wrapped up in the show, but some of the rumor and the lore, Jon finds evidence that they all were a part of this big plot to kind of help him. I mean, what's also to say that Dany isn't, look how many people were resurrected, for crying out loud. You know what I mean? She was stabbed, Matt. That's it. Lady Stoneheart was like, Catelyn was her throat was slit and she was in the river for 3 days. There's nothing to say Dany can't be brought back. That's
well,
crazy.
and the interesting idea about a potential Dany coming back in a future show is that she did talk to remember Kinvarna came up. Kinvarna is a character who shows up like once, right?
Yeah.
And talks to her. Another character who showed up and talked to her once was Quaithe.
Yeah.
And it's like there's another big mystery that you could use to go forward.
I mean, all you have to do, Matt, at the end of this Jon Snow spinoff, right, is find some evidence, or like the cliffhanger for going into a season 2 of it would be Dany's back. They wouldn't need to have her in it at all the whole time, and then boom, she's back. And then think of the conflict that those two have, right? You stabbed me, you killed me. I mean, like it's war, buddy. At that point,
well, Jon was stabbed too.
He was, for the watch. The watch.